Hi, Anupama. It's lovely to be sharing this stage with you. As we all know, every architect has a defining moment when their journey has transitioned towards something. Did you have any moment where your journey transitioned towards environmental consciousness?
Uh, I wouldn't say our journey transitioned into environmental consciousness. I would say it was always part of our outlook. Harini and I were two close friends and college mates. We were eager to start a practice back in the day, and we were wondering, we were at crossroads wondering what was next when we were approached by a client who wanted us to build him a home in Auroville. And his only design brief was that this house had to look like it was 100 years old. And we preserved two beautiful old cashew trees that grew right in the middle of the site. And then the house sort of just grew around it. It was a joy to work with somebody who wanted to recycle so many materials that went into his house.
Okay, that's actually a dream first project for many. And let's fast forward to the present now. Studio DCode is now 15 years old.
It is.
And I can see that you've stayed true to your roots. And please tell us how you've managed to do that.
Well, while we have been on this journey for more than a decade, in the recent past, we've had more and more people coming in who want to practice climate-friendly or earth-friendly building technologies and make a shift towards reviving past traditions. And this is what excites and motivates us and keeps us going.
Okay. I am motivated as well now. Us being at a climate conference today, I think the word sustainability has been thrown around a lot today. But I think Anupama will have to emphasize on what sustainability is in architecture.
So sustainability in architecture really should come in at the planning stage. Larger openings for increased airflow, which also taps into natural light and ventilation. Fewer walls, which means less materials going into your building. These materials should ideally come in from a reasonable radius around your site as well.
Right.
Thirdly, I'd say judicious use of materials once your structure is up. Judicious use of material to clad surfaces is something to consider. I think there's a grace and honesty that a building speaks of when you leave building material in its natural and raw form.
Yeah, that sounds like a very holistic approach towards design. When you were mentioning vertical surfaces being covered, there are a lot of synthetic materials upcoming in the market with tags like wood-like and stone-like, but it's mostly just plastic. And in the past few decades, we've constructed so many buildings without keeping sustainability in mind. Do you think sustainability is something that can be retrofitted into it?
I think buildings can be made to be operationally sustainable. We could make a shift over to solar power, shielding the building from radiation to cut down air conditioning needs, and these shading devices can be retrofitted. Eco sewage treatment plants, recycling grey water, and really finding any other alternative sources of power are all methods to make a building operationally sustainable.
Yeah, I think that gives us all some hope that small changes can make a big difference,
We
right?
can.
And let's move on to our city, Madras. I have to talk about it. So, Madras just turned 384 years old, and we've all been celebrating it in our own way recently. Uh, the buildings, especially, have been a very big part of it. How do you think these traditional and vernacular methods that have been seen in those buildings can be implemented in modern architecture?
Well, we live in a country that has practiced intelligent passive cooling techniques and climate-friendly design for ages now. And these sadly have taken a back seat because of trying to create buildings that are fashionably, there. At our studio, we try and use a traditional brick, a smaller brick called achikal. For wall finishes, we use a variety of natural plasters like mud, lime, and cow dung.
Right. As someone who's been working with heritage for the past 6 years, I'm very happy hearing all those terms in your design. My personal favorites would be Madras Terrace and red oxide flooring. I think most of us must have seen in our ancestral homes. I grew up in my grandma's house with red oxide flooring. Also, the courtyards and arches over opening instead of beams. So, can we see those elements in your design?
Most definitely. We use one or more of the techniques that you've described in almost all of our designs. While we're on the topic, why cut down new trees for woodwork? Why not use old doors and windows, that made of the finest wood that India boasted of in the past? And that kind of, craftsmanship is very hard to come by these days. Old rafters and beams from salvaged from buildings that have been torn down can be used. Another fantastic material to consider would be railway sleepers.
Okay.
You'd know them. You'd known these as the stout wooden beams below railway tracks. The government is now changing them to concrete, and so they are available in abundance and can be procured in the right way. These beams are an excellent material because they can combat a variety of harsh weather conditions. They've been lying out in the open for decades, exposed to the elements.
From what you say, I think repurposing is something we should all make a conscious choice towards. And giving new purposes to old things is something we should bring into our lifestyle as such. Can you share anything more in that aspect of repurposing?
The cement industry is the third largest source of industrial pollution in the world. It emits thousands of tons of greenhouse gases annually. It's also responsible for 2% of global carbon dioxide emissions as well. And this is not even counting the fossil fuels that are burned to produce the energy used to make cement. So in our studio, it's a passion of ours to explore ways in which we can reduce the use of cement.
Right.
And one of the ways we do this is filler slabs.
Oh.
Filler slabs are not an indigenous technique. They were introduced in India by Laurie Baker, the famous architect. They function on the principle that the top of a concrete slab takes compressive load, the steel below takes tension, and the concrete below it doesn't do anything really other than providing a cover for the steel. So why not replace this concrete with earth-friendly materials like clay pots and clay tiles? And you can get as creative as you like with the design because it doesn't affect the structural stability of the slab. And while we have, where we have good earth on the site, we don't source it from a distance. When we have good quality earth on the site, we create rammed earth walls. And this is a technique where you make a slurry with mud, water, and a little bit, just 5% of cement to stabilize it. And then you ram it in layers, and hence you get beautiful striations in the end product.
Yeah. While all these techniques sound very interesting, how do you convince clients, and what are the common apprehensions do you face?
I think the first question we get asked every time when we suggest, natural technique or a special technique, if you might, is the question of maintenance, daily maintenance. How do I keep my walls clean? When in reality, a smoothly finished, natural plastered wall requires much less maintenance than a conventional wall that is plastered and painted. And I do admit that exposed brick walls and exposed stone walls have crevices, but all it really takes to clean it is to run a broom across it maybe once in 2 weeks, depending on where you stay and how many openings you have. But the trade-off is in the amount of cement that you save from plastering and then paint, and the toxins that you breathe in when you paint your walls. And I think this is a small trade-off.
Now that we've covered the short-term maintenance, how would you say that we can maintain it in the long term? Give us one tip.
Okay, I'd pick an oxide wall again.
Okay.
So once in 8 years, all you need to do is, maybe 7 or 8 years, take a soft, clean cloth, buy a tin of beeswax that you can source in any hardware store, and then rub that wax into your wall, and your oxide wall is shiny and new again.
And one more thing that I've faced while working with heritage and in architecture in general is that traditional methods don't give a look of glamour. This is a view I come across a lot. How would you respond to such views?
Firstly, I'd like to bust a myth. Traditional techniques are not low cost. Low cost falls under a completely different umbrella. Traditional techniques are handmade, so they take a long time to make, and a lot of artisans are employed in this. And the real payoff is in the running costs in the future, where you don't need painting and other forms of maintenance.
You think people need to be more informed about these choices?
Well, yes. Using imported Italian marble, wall putty, false ceiling, imported wood, stone, lighting, all seem to be ways to make a statement that you've arrived or made something of yourself. But I believe that you can make a house or any building look luxurious with local materials by creative design, innovative use of material, and stunning engineering. I don't think people are making informed decisions when they go with synthetic materials, because I think if they knew the kind of impact it was having on the environment, they would definitely opt for an earth-friendly option.
People having to connect with their community and having a sense of cultural roots in that place would also lead them to do this naturally. Air conditioning is a problem that we are all facing because it is contributing to a lot of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. What would you suggest as an alternative to that? Is there an alternative?
I don't think I could imagine, a life without air conditioning, as most of us, can't do either. But a major contributor to climate change goes into the energy that's required to heat and cool a building. Mm-hmm. And what we could do is to reduce the amount of air conditioning and heating requirements by maintaining an ambient temperature within a building. And how we can do this is to control how the internal temperature is affected by the external. Green facades and shading devices are the way to do this. And they also act as a tool to architects, because now you have a way to make your building unique and aesthetic while still, combating this climate change.
So all these sound nice, but when it comes to clients, wouldn't they think that cost is a considerable factor in these kinds of methods?
Shading devices need not be expensive. Ironically, in the past few decades, we did use these shading devices in buildings in Chennai. You might have noticed a lot of buildings on Mount Road.
So you're talking about the egg crate facades.
Exactly. These are called egg crate facades because they look like egg crates. And these were an extremely innovative kind of design because they prevented, they allowed light to come in, but they also shaded the building very well. Right. Yeah, but with an effort to conserve cement in recent times, we could switch over to using aluminum and steel to create these kind of features. And aluminum and steel are great materials in that they are completely recyclable. They have great workability, which means you can make them in any form and structure that you like. Mm-hmm. And also, they add a contemporary touch to a building, which makes them an architect's delight.
Mm. But if this method was so good, why did we shift away from it?
I think with the advent of glass, that became a trending facade treatment for buildings, shielding it against radiation took a backseat somehow. And we create these glass cubes that perform like greenhouses in a hot climate like Chennai. Now, I do admit maybe these buildings don't look as impressive as a new building, but it's only from lack of maintenance. Maybe they are in a state of neglect. But if you were to put a building with a shading device next to one which is a glass cube on the same street in a city like Chennai, can you imagine over the life cycle of a building which roughly lasts from 35 to 40 years, can you imagine the difference in these two, the amount of air conditioning that went into these two buildings? Which one would you think was better choice?
Obviously not the glass one.
Yes.
We're talking about energy consumption research.
Correct. In terms of energy consumption, imagine the amount of saving we can do if we plan intelligent shading devices.
That is actually very reassuring to hear that in the long run, we have such solutions to it. What about upcycling and recycling? Do you employ these methods?
Yes, we do. We upcycle old doors and windows. We recycle old stone columns and wood columns. We also use bottles. We upcycle bottles to make walls.
My personal favorite.
Yes, but I think finding a way to use local waste and industrial waste is a need of the hour because of the harm they cause to the environment.
Okay. What would be one thing that you would say is the best in the recycling materials?
I think I'd opt for earthcrete. Earthcrete is a technique where you mix broken brick bats, the waste brick bats, with mud and a little cement again to stabilize it, 5% again, and a proportion of water. You make a slurry with it, and then you pour it into a mold and allow it to set. And once the wall cures, it's very strong and durable.
Initially, we were talking about industrial waste and how they are harmful. Do you think those could be pulled into this?
Yes, I mean, fly ash is a success story. I think a lot of people know that fly ash, which is a byproduct of the coal industry, has been incorporated in cement bricks for quite a while now. But there are so many other industrial wastes that we must think about. For example, aluminum, that's become such a popular material now, has a very harmful byproduct called red mud. And this is dumped in vast quantities indiscriminately. And then there's, of course, scrap tire waste, this plastic waste, and demolition debris, which is always available in abundance, and something has to be done about these things.
Are these in use or in research stage?
They're still in research stage, and rather they've gone to testing stage, and there have been a lot of advantages found with these hybrid blocks compared to conventional bricks.
Talking about research, it brings to mind the 3D printing, which has become very popular now. It has gone from experimenting to practical use. How do you think traditional techniques would work in combination with 3D printing?
3D printing techniques as they exist don't deal with finishing, and there's no icing on the cake. And this icing, as well as the desire to create something unique, makes me think that 3D printing and traditional techniques can exist, coexist.
Right. Can you elaborate on icing on the cake part?
Yes.
Sounded interesting.
So once a building, the structure has come up, there are still doors and windows to put in. There are roofing options, flooring options, and then there are the walls that need to be finished. And while there are prefabricated elements for these, but the choice of going traditional or contemporary, off the rack or customized still rests with the end user. With words like local and traditional being embraced, and the desire to leave behind a smaller carbon footprint, I think that traditional techniques are still being cherished. Yes. Like we see with everything else, technology and tradition can coexist in harmony. The old and new can exist together.
Yeah, that reminds me of Jane Jacobs' famous quote that new ideas need old buildings. And I also believe that the new building should also employ old ideas. So on that note, would you like us to have a final thought of yours?
Well, I think sustainability is not just a feature in a building. It should really be part of one's nature. It should be a way of life. And once you do that, everything that you do, from the food you eat to the clothes that you wear, to the house that you live in, the way you manage your waste, everything will emulate how much you respect the fact that this earth belongs to everyone and everything on it.
Amen to that, yes.